Radiation's not a word you'd often think about when you think about the 1800s and the wigs and the makeup and the lipstick and the pomp and the circumstance and the pomp and the ceremony. But you're in for a shock today, because the true master, I believe, on this planet right now, one of the most important voices, is sitting here with us, and his name is Guy Anderson. Welcome back, friend. How are you?
Wow, humbled. That was one hell of an introduction. Thank you so much. I'm well, thank you. How are you, Danny?
Oh, I'm so good. And as people know me, they know I don't lie. If I get wrong, I apologize and say, oh, I got that wrong. But I never lie on purpose, and I'm not lying about you. You are so exciting to me. I cannot believe you said yes to speak at the greatest disclosure event, whistleblowing event on planet Earth, September 10th, 11th, and 12th in Eastbourne in England this year, 2026. Delighted to have you alongside David Icke, Kathy O'Brien, Tony Rodriguez, Max Lowen, JP, me, Danny Henderson, Billy Carson, Praveen Mohan, Guy Anderson, that's you, Nikki Allen. So excited. What a lineup. Anyway, you have so much knowledge. I cannot wait to get into this next subject. So I'm just going to hand the floor to you and just have our minds blown, everybody. Here we go. Guy Anderson, genius at
Right. Okay. I'm still getting over the introduction. And the fact that I'm going to be on a platform with such incredible people, people that I've followed for a very long time. Um, well, I've been looking into the Napoleonic Wars, in particular, the Napoleonic War that took place in Moscow. And first of all, found it strange that at the time Moscow wasn't the capital of Russia; it was St. Petersburg. So why did they march to a different city if they were going to take over? You know, so I started looking into that further and realized that actually there was more architecture that appears to be Tartarian in Moscow, and also Moscow was a Tartarian city and a capital. So I started looking into that and thinking, well, that now makes sense. If we follow the official narrative, there was no reason to go to Moscow. If we look at Moscow as being Tartarian and the Tartarian capital of Russia, things start to align. And then I read the account of a French officer called Count de Seur, who said that what they witnessed in Moscow was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. When the place was burning, and we're talking about brick and rock and stone that was melting, that was on fire and melting, he said that it defied all logic, that temperatures needed to achieve that weren't possible through fire, not normal fire. Then they found evidence of church bells that had melted. And he at the time said that, as far as he was aware, it would need to be something in the region of 4,000 degrees. When they were watching the fire, and this came from nowhere, and they thought it was a meteorite. Um, it looks like actually direct energy weapons, a series of them hitting all over Europe. The fire was going towards the wind. It was not just defying logic, that's defying nature and physics. The fire was going into the wind. It wasn't being blown away and pushed. It was actually fighting the wind and carrying on traveling. He said it was almost like it was alive, like it was some kind of energy that he couldn't describe and hadn't seen before. And I've been looking at direct energy weapons for some time and how long these have actually been in existence. Devices like the Vajra, which in the Hindus describe as being an energy bolt or a lightning or a thunderbolt and a weapon of sorts. Elon Musk actually has one on his bedside table. So I think that they've had direct energy weapons for a very, very long time, thousands and thousands of years. And actually, I associate those with suits of armor and armor being used to protect against direct energy weapons. But that's another story. So I then did some digging into the area that was burnt and destroyed during the Napoleonic conflict in Moscow and discovered that there are no trees in the area that are older than 200 years. I then started looking at signs of radiation. And then I stumbled across the sudden, I mean, we know when we look at old paintings and so on that wigs became popular, that lots of people were applying heavy white makeup, wearing gloves all the time, and dressed to the nines. You could hardly see any skin exposed at all. And it dawned on me that the reason that wigs were popular is because they were bald. And a lot of people say this. A lot of researchers have said that they believe these parasites, and a lot of people, a lot of these rulers, and normal people like you and I, were bald, completely bald. They were losing their teeth as well. Allegedly, a high content of sugar in their diet. Sugar was a luxury, so that doesn't cut it. They were losing their teeth. A lot of people were having burns on their face, all sorts of blemishes appearing. Their hands more so. So gloves started to be worn quite frequently inside, not just outside, but inside. They were permanently wearing gloves. And the makeup had lead in it. This white, heavy makeup had lead. So I started looking into why would people with incredible money that dressed immaculately, wearing the finest clothing that money could buy and was available at the time, shave off their hair because they were concerned about getting head lice, have false teeth, wear heavy white makeup, have to wear wigs, gloves permanently, at the same time that we were told there was an outbreak of syphilis and typhus that were causing similar effects with people. Now, these are all symptoms of radiation poisoning. So I started looking into that further, and I concluded, and I'm still, prepared to be, obviously, prepared to be proven wrong, which would be quite difficult because none of us really are able to go back that far and find out anything that could substantiate either way. I think that the Napoleonic Wars and the Napoleonic Comet of 1811 and 1812 were direct energy weapons that were atomic, nuclear of sorts. Um, there are a lot of people out there that say nuclear doesn't exist, but we've got nuclear glass out there. People find it. I mean, Billy Carson has spoken about this, that in Egypt, especially around the bent near the bent pyramid, that shows signs of being burnt at a very high temperature, and people find nuclear glass in the sand all the time. So I actually believe nuclear weapons of sorts, high energy weapons that have radiation, have been used to destroy previous civilizations, and that they've had them for a very, very long time. And that what we're told about the after effects of radiation poisoning and sickness aren't quite right. And we can look at Chernobyl, Hiroshima, Nagasaki as just three places where life returned to relative normality a lot quicker than in theory it should. We're told that if after a nuclear explosion that you can't go back for thousands of years without risk of, radiation poisoning and sickness. Yet within moments they were back in Hiroshima and Nagasaki rebuilding and excavating. And within moments of Chernobyl, the disaster that took place, they were back on the land and fishing. And people were exploring, looking for what they could find. These people are still alive. So I think that the radiation is is there, that exists, this radiation poisoning. Obviously, it exists, it's a factor. But I don't think it's anything like we've been told. Otherwise, people wouldn't be wandering around Chernobyl now and wouldn't be on Hiroshima and Nagasaki now within literally spitting distance of the bomb site, the zone. So the wigs, the false teeth, the gloves, the heavy white makeup, I think the parasites inherited a world that had been nuked and were taking the buildings over that had been targeted. And I think we're actually suffering from radiation poisoning and sickness. They were also having problems with fertility at the time. The public were told that it's typhus, syphilis, various other outbreaks and ailments, but actually that it was living in the aftermath of literally a nuclear war. There you go.
It's so incredible, and it leads people to think about so many different things. One of them, when you mentioned the DEW, the direct energy weapon that were used way back, they look a bit like a Doge. What
Mm.
did you call it? What was the
Vajra,
Vadra? That's it, the
the
Vadra,
the
the Vadra.
thunderbolt.
Yeah, the
Mm.
Thunderbolt. Yeah, we've seen lots of examples of those in different descriptions and images over the millennia. And we know that we've been able to harness these informations and these actual weaponries that are used in the militaries across the world today. The most recent example you could say would be Maui, the island of Maui, when the island or the town of Lahaina was nuked on purpose by the parasites that have been running our planet, the dingy dongs, many names for them. Parasites is a very good one, of course. And that the people, like there's the man who's been on my channel 4 times, former police, former fireman, was in the middle of the fire rescuing families, trying to get out away from the fire. When the police blocked and a load of people got incinerated in their cars, yet some trees were left behind, some blue roofs weren't touched, some blue parasol umbrellas weren't touched. It is all evidence of direct energy weapons. And Archie, when he woke up in the morning, and he said the wind was incredible. It was a wind they hadn't known before in Lahaina on the island of Maui. And it is an ancient site, an ancient star gate exists there. The ancients have known it, and the ancient Hawaiians have so many rituals that they do. All that was interfered with and destroyed. You got people like Larry Fink, richest bloke in the
Mm.
world pretty much, on an island just opposite. He can see from his front deck, the catastrophe. A lot of these adults and children are still in hotels. The people of Maui, the governments, the mayor, etc., they've done pretty much fuck all. I know that's true because I'm in touch with Archie. He comes on this channel a lot. That's one aspect that puts us in mind of the nuclearization, direct energy weaponry, okay, on the different levels. There was something else you mentioned as well that ties into where we can look at proof today. The radiation, sickness, poisoning, those symptoms. How many people across the COVID landscape, the pandemia, how many of those people presented with exact radiation sickness, high level sickness, altitude sickness symptoms that would then pretendfully presented as COVID, the virus? People get very triggered. It was a bioweapon. It wasn't a proper flu virus. It was manipulated. You know what gets me about the whole thing is the simple root cause that it was a manufactured, patented bug or energy weapon or bioweapon, whatever you want to call it. It was made. Somebody made that. Somebody made COVID, and then it was released. And people keep forgetting. And who funded that? Well, go look for yourselves, guys. But what somebody was involved in that. You said about syphilis and typhus. What about AIDS? The manufacturing of the
Mm.
AIDS virus. Oh, it was African men sleeping with monkeys. How rude! How rude! It was Fauci, yeah, the monstrous Fauci, who has his hands all over the manufacturing of the AIDS virus. And there's so much proof. Judy Mikovich, the doctor that worked with him that exposed him. Yeah, lots and lots of. So what we're seeing is where we're going back to in a second with you: the wigs, the makeup, the balding, the teeth, the sickness, the deaths. We've seen this, and we're seeing it now. This is why it's so important that you bring forward your evidence and your research so that people can have a mind to match and marry what we're seeing again by the same parasites. Please continue.
Yeah, and I just find it very strange, as I said earlier on, that people with incredible wealth and power would shave their hair off and then wear a wig. Now, the wigs were made from all sorts of things. I mean, sometimes human hair, sometimes horse hair. They were impossible to keep clean, very, very unhygienic. So they were making matters worse. So if they wanted to avoid hair lice, why would you put some dirty thing on you that you can't clean properly and put that on your head instead if you were concerned about hygiene? Now, people will say, oh, well, it was because of hygiene that they were concerned, and that's why they shaved their head bald. And also, people will say, well, at the time, hygiene wasn't something that people really addressed properly. They were notoriously dirty, didn't look after themselves. Have you seen what they wore and where they lived? Are we expected to truly believe that they had these magnificent palaces dripping with gold and yet didn't bother washing? Come on, you're going to have to do a little bit better than that.
What about Versailles? The Palace of
Exactly. I'm
Versailles.
going there in a
Oh,
few
we,
weeks'
oh
time.
my God, I love that place so much. And round the back, the Petit Trianon, where Marie Antoinette built her Austrian village because she missed Austria so much. Oh my God. Oh, let's build Versailles, the greatest palace in all of the world. Oh, we forgot to build toilets and bathrooms. Balls! No, you didn't. You got the most magnificent fountain ever made. Waterworks, plumbing, for this spectacular
Mm,
ensemble. You're telling us that you forgot to do toilets and plumbing. You're
mm.
telling us that people pooed and weed behind the very heavy curtains. Away with you to the stables for a beating. Continue, guys.
The interesting thing about that particular building is that it was called the Palace of the Sun God or the Sun King. I can't remember, which is a pagan god deity, and that it would suggest. I mean, incidentally, the BBC in London at White City is also has a statue to represent the same deity, the sun god Helios. Um, so, why would somebody who we are told was Christian have that palace built, call it the Palace of the Sun God or Sun King, have a statue of Helios there, worshipping the Sun God, which was a pagan and considered to be Tartarian god, because they were accepting that beings way more intelligent than them and far more powerful than them were allowing them to harness energy from the sky. So they were always looking up to the ether and worshipping the ether. And that's where it comes from. So why would somebody with Christian beliefs be worshipping a pagan god and naming the palace after it when it was first built? It doesn't make any sense. And also, if you look into their financial situation at the time, France had no money. They were bust. I mean, and that is also true with the Eiffel Tower. They didn't have any money at the time of the Eiffel Tower being built. They owed Germany an absolute fortune. They were bankrupt. Yet they got together millions of pounds or francs and shipped the Eiffel Tower. Sorry, beg your pardon, the Statue of Liberty. They shipped the Statue of Liberty to America. They built it and gave it to them as a gift at a time when they were bankrupt. They had nothing. So a lot of these narratives for historical buildings fall apart when you just follow the paper trail. The money, forget the workmanship. Where did the labor come from? Where did the materials come from? Where did the money come from? So yeah, I'm looking forward to having a good dig around Paris, but and I haven't been there for a long time. The only thing I'm disappointed about is that the catacombs are closed at the moment for maintenance, and I did want to get in there and have a good rummage around.
Ah, that's brutal
Mm,
for you because, as you've explained, the catacombs are where the last reset, all the bodies that were
mm.
killed and maimed and radiated, they got all those skulls. It's just so eerie how they've piled up thousands, well, millions of skulls underneath the tunnels of Paris. Why, to tell us a bit more about that while we're on that subject.
Yeah, that's a strange one. A lot of people aren't aware, but there are catacombs all over the world. I mean, they're here. We've got a large one in Edinburgh, but even here, down in Devon, in Exeter, there are catacombs. They're everywhere. They're just not something people talk about. They're closed to the public. In Exeter, you can actually go on a tour to see the catacombs here. These are, I believe, trophy cabinets These are the previous civilization. I mean, if you look at Paris catacombs, 6 million skulls. 6 million. So if you look at when they actually put the skulls in there according to the mainstream narrative, and you look at the population leading up to the time, because the graves were overflowing, they'd had some floods and some rain, and they decided to put them all underground. Really? They'd never had 6 million bodies to start with. And they're not people that have dated these. They're saying that they're all around the same age. So this isn't hundreds of years of people's remains, and they're not showing signs of one skull is significantly older than the other. This is a trophy cabinet, and I think at the time served as a warning. This is what happened to the last civilization, and I think that that happened across the world. But I also think that they have dumped an incredible amount of bodies underneath places you can't excavate, and golf courses is one, I believe. And also, all over the world, there are parks called Hyde Park. I think they are hiding remains under those as well, and probably not structures because they don't tend to be elevated. So I think that they've hidden a lot of bodies, but with the Napoleonic Wars, I think that they are the remains in the catacombs of the Napoleonic uh, victims, if you like, the people that fell. We know that they shipped the bodies back, the actual, not the skeletons, but the actual body itself. They were shipped back to Britain from France to use as fertilizer on farms here. So we kind of indirectly ate them. The teeth were removed from a lot of the bodies and sold as dentures. So it all kind of ties together. At the same time, you've got people losing their teeth, people with no hair, a beard tax to prevent people from growing a beard, I believe because the parasites couldn't grow them. So they didn't want other people growing them. So they introduced a beard tax. And the white makeup, the heavy white makeup, that had lead in it. And I think that that was because they knew that lead could protect them from the radiation poisoning, the actual radiation itself. The lead was being used as some kind of barrier for that. So it's something I'm still digging. It's a rabbit hole I'm still climbing down. But if you look at the Napoleonic Wars and the comet, the Napoleon comet in particular, the description people give of that is not a comet. They're describing a series of missiles, for want of a better word, which I believe are direct energy weapons. And I think that as I said earlier on, as Billy Carson said about this on numerous occasions, I think we've been nuked more than once. And that's what they do. Each time we get to a point where we are no longer able to be controlled, they get rid of us and start again. And that's got to be the quickest way and the most effective and efficient way of removing a population. Nuke it.
I mean, so true, so true. And there's so much evidence. There's also people that postulate that Napoleon is a fictional character,
Mm,
and this whole kind of
I'm one of
strange.
them.
Yeah, you're one of them. Okay, well, let's take a little look at that. And before we go there deeply, tell us about, for those that have never heard of, the Napoleonic comets, like the comet, what happened, because that's an element of history that is not too much kind of looked at.
Yeah, so this is described as being an event that people saw. I mean, a quick Google search on Google Images will show you people drawing it, people etching it, painting it. There's also a cartoon drawn of Napoleon's comet and the tail. Now, within the tail are the heads of the 13 bloodline families at the time. Now, that's quite telling, but there's an awful lot out there on it. Um, this isn't doesn't appear to be a comet hitting one particular area, but a series. So some people think that it broke up. When it hit the atmosphere, it broke up into a series of literal fireballs, meteorites, that destroyed, just coincidentally, destroyed almost every Tartarian city in Europe. But at the same time, they experienced a very similar event in America. So 1811, 1812, the same thing happened there. And I can never remember the exact name of the American comet, but they called it something like Tunguska. something like that, and it's named after an Indian chief, and that hit almost every town and city when it broke up and caused fire and destruction and mud floods and quakes and all sorts of devastation as a direct result. So are we talking about the same thing? Because they saw it in America, they saw it in Europe, and it was documented. I think that this was a series of direct energy weapons or warheads of some description. Now, some people say that there were 200 of these. Some people say there were 100 of them, and that there are craters still across the world where the impacts took place. So if they have a look at the Napoleon's comet, they'll see on a Google search that sooner or later they'll come across one painting that actually shows Napoleon's head as the head of the comet itself, and then the tail they'll see the wigged people, the parasites. They'll see all of those in it. And in some art, it's quite comical. There are cartoons about it, almost as if it was funny. You know, it was a comical event. So people need to have a look at that. But I personally believe that it was the parasites using direct energy weapons, and that it was responsible for Moscow, for example. I mean, to reach 4,000 degrees, to be able to melt a church bell and melt stone and rock and brick. You know, we're talking of extreme heat, not achieved by normal fire, not by going around and just setting things on fire. But the narrative is that a lot of the structures were wooden and they caught fire and blah blah blah. The same with the Great Fire of London in Pudding Lane. You know, oh well, the reason the fire escalated at the speed that it did was because a lot of the structures were wooden. It burnt London down. You know, something as innocent as the how the fire started was ultimately the cause of London burning to the ground. And if Anatoly Fomenko is right, if they've added 800 years to the timeline, and we're now into really what would be 1226, but with dates of significance and documentation and buildings and artwork and so on, they just put a one in front of it. Then the Great Fire of London didn't take place in 1666. It took place in 666. Now, these weapons of mass destruction, I think that it's no coincidence that these events happen in an almost biblical, apocalyptic manner. I think that the rule book is followed to an extent by these parasites. And by the rule book, I mean that they are following scripture, they're following prophecy. They believe, whether it's true or not, they think it is, and they are fulfilling what they believe to be prophecy, and they're doing it at pivotal moments that align with perhaps Satanism. And you know, people referred to Napoleon as the Antichrist. You know, Adolf Hitler was the Antichrist. Tony Blair's the Antichrist. There's something in it. So whether you're religious, God-fearing or not, I think these people do follow that. And they certainly are, as far as they're concerned, um, really the controllers behind Satan's little season, or we would call it New World Order, but right now they would call it Satan's little season. And it mirrors everything that we have been told is coming. Um, so yeah, I think that there's something not quite right with all of the Napoleonic Wars, the American Civil War, the fires that we've had. There is something more to it, and my guess is that it's nuclear. Now, people out there will say, "Well, I don't think there are nuclear weapons." Blah blah blah. Debunk them. I'm not talking about what we've been told over the last, few decades. I'm talking about technology that has existed for a very, very long time in a very different form to what we've been told. And that, as I said, with regard to the radiation poisoning and how long, What we I remember as a kid hearing that, oh, the nuclear half-life is, X thousand years and you can't go back there for,
Yeah, got to be in the bunkers and
yeah, we won't ever be able to go back there, and it'll be generations before, thousands of years will pass before that land will become safe again. Well, tell them that in Hiroshima. Tell them that at Chernobyl, where people today will be fishing there and wandering around.
where the jungle has already reclaimed the land that was built
Yes.
on, and because that's what the jungle does. Yeah, and Moscow as well, for example, with all these beautiful ancient Tartarian buildings that we couldn't possibly copy even today. And it's just so annoying. There are so many silly people, like little, parasites themselves saying, it never happened, it was a myth. We can do it with a hammer and chisel. If one more person says that, honestly, I'm going to have to smack them, put them over my knee and stand them in the corner for 2 weeks, because it's just like, you're getting in the way now. Why are you getting in the way? Why are you throwing out ignorant comments to stop history being fully revealed? In Moscow, so as I was saying to you earlier, I go to the odd boot camp for training. I like hardcore physical training. I met this woman, beautiful lady, a teacher in Moscow, and she told me about the underground city in Moscow. Now, if Moscow gets hit, everyone's going to survive because it's a massive underground city, as there are in other places around the world. These people have their defenses because when the surface gets reset, which it has several times, each time it's reset, the humans then know, well, we don't want that to happen again, so let's prepare for potential disaster so that we're safe and we're not wiped out because of all the egos around the world. And again, we go back to Tesla. The most devastating thing to me, one of the single most top 5 devastating things, is that Nikola Tesla created a weapon to defend every single country, land, sea, and air. Every single country had access to this one technology that would prevent anyone coming in. You could take a plane out, laser technology. And people said, oh, it's your death ray gun, your death gun.
Mm.
It never wanted to be remembered for it. He never called it that. But because the asshats, the parasites, have to keep looshing and killing and murdering and starving and raping and pedophiling and all the dreadful sick things the satanic ones do, the Luciferians do, Satan's children do, that the countries then killed and hid this weaponry, which would have ended war in 1897. That's how long. And again, people say, oh, the humans aren't ready. The humans are going to kick the asses of the parasites. It's happening now. See Davos right now this week.
Mm.
Or they think they can walk around safely. Bill Gates and Trudeau and all of those, they're getting accosted by civilian journalists who are not having it. Good job I'm not there. I would have got that fucking Bill Gates in a headlock. Ugh! Would have given him a smack. Anyway, calm me down, someone. Because, yeah, humanity, enough. We're not having it. You're not going to reset us. You're not going to kill us. And with people like you, scholars like you, bringing up the evidence and the research, it's a beautiful time to be alive. So I'm going to step down again while you continue. Of course, do you want to go into a bit about the law courts and the wigs and the capes and all of that kind of costumery and the way that the long ships and the pirate ships and the English and all that kind of pomp and ceremony? Any thoughts on that?
The law courts are an interesting one. And it's interesting that they still wear wigs today, isn't it? I mean, why is that? I mean, we would be told it's tradition, but
Because
it doesn't.
they're bankers with a W in the front.
Oh, they certainly are. The whole judicial system and the process I find interesting because it's the use of words. Um, but for me, a court is very similar to a church. If you look at the layout, it's a very similar structure. And one person is residing, and everybody else is told to be quiet, stand when you're supposed to stand, sit when you're supposed to sit. Um, I find that tells us something without having to actually say anything, and that it is just another form of order, perhaps law and order before we had law. But the thing that I find most interesting with the judicial system is that in plain sight we are considered to be energy. That is it. We are just energy. And that's why we are charged and placed in a cell. We are a little walking battery. And they put us into a building. And these red brick buildings, these Tartarian buildings, that particular red brick, that can actually store energy. It's the same chemical process that creates rust. So you can actually store energy inside a brick. And all of the prisons were the same red brick. The prisons, the asylums, and the orphanages, and the workhouses, all the same brick. We're talking about the Loosh farm here, that our energy is being taken away. And they use that in other things as well. Everything ultimately, I believe, is about energy. Now, Nikola Tesla said, frequency, light, and so on. But I think actually, if you're going to sort of narrow it down to one thing, it has to be energy. And that's also present in the voting system, in politics. You go to a polling station, you vote red or blue. Red or blue were typically the colours of the horseshoe magnets we used to have when we were younger. One side was red, one was blue. And you enter a negative or a positive situation. So I think that it's everywhere. And also it's the same with money, with giving birth as well. It's all to do with flow and banks and so on, currents. So I think everything has been made to reinforce the fact that we are just energy and energy to be taken. So if you can make us ill, if you can subdue us, if you can lock us away, you can lower our energy, lower our frequency and vibration at the same time, and harness that energy for them. So I kind of went off at a tangent there, didn't I? But
But it's so important. It's so important, and like, as you say, you know, and as we've said and noted in the past, many people that speak out against the parasites, the ding dongs at the top, the aristocracy, the ones that put themselves, the bloodline families, without misery and war and murder, without all that negative, destructive energy, they simply cannot survive. They
I
simply
agree.
cannot thrive. They don't create as we create. They're not able
Mm,
to function and joy. People talk about the Kundalini coming up the spine, out through the third eye or out through the crown. We are these beautiful fonts of this powerful energetic field, and they have to plug into us to keep the negative down, to keep us in the lower 3D. It's like when we, as you said, rightly said, you talked about the fire of London that was really in 666. And I remember learning about, Samuel Pepys, and laughing. This little girl, Anna, my friend Anna, we were 7, and she called him Samuel Pepys because it's spelt that way, Pepys. Of course, we're trained. No, you pronounce it Peeps. And how dirty London was, and people peed and they threw their pee and their poo out the window in the streets, and the houses were all built. I mean, in what right mind would adults of any given situation allow such an atrocious environment? A hoarder would, an alcoholic drug addict would, because they don't function. They can't function. But most people, no matter what their living situation is, are going to try to do their best to eat, to stay clean, to be courteous, to have a nice environment. Of course we are. But because they've been degrading society since before the fire of London, degrading us, we're programmed to accept, the nonsense, the hyperbole of the past. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you mentioned the red bricks and everything, and the asylums that were quickly thrown up, or the people during the last reset. We're not going to tell everything here, of course, there's way too much information. But with the nonsense of the courts, the wigs, the capes, the cloaks, the pomp and ceremony today to try and keep that energy frequency intact. What are they passing? They're passing maritime law, the
yes.
water laws, and it all ties in or flows in or banks itself in like chortle chortle, using a whole different law system that kind of permits their atrocities to kind of pervade on the rest of humanity. I mean, they are such villains.
It's interesting you brought up maritime law because a lot of people might not be aware that we talk about the Cabbage Patch babies, the children that we believe were clones that they repopulated with that came out of Germany and then literally became the Industrial Revolution workforce and repopulated. But what's interesting is, bless you, traditionally in Slavic law, the cabbage represents the womb. And lots of children at the time were told that you were found in a cabbage patch. And that's the story that we've been given, and that's why the cabbage is familiar. There's actually a hospital, a maternity hospital in Tomsk in Russia, and outside there is a statue of a cabbage with a baby emerging from it, and people still kiss it on the forehead for luck before they go in to deliver their baby. And that's an interesting one, isn't it? Deliver. But there's another reason why these babies were called cabbage patch babies, and it's to do with maritime law and admiralty law. The actual transportation of something, whether that's a living creature or being or stock, weapons, whatever it is, but the transportation of one thing from one country to another is called cabotage law. And that means that the law states that as soon as that whatever it is, people, stock, goods, arrives in another country, it then becomes the property and the responsibility of the country that receives it. So I think that there are two reasons why they were called Cabbage Patch Babies. One is because of the Slavic mythology into them being, or sorry, law rather, of them being grown, babies being grown in cabbage patches, but and the cabbage representing a womb. And the other one is because it ties in nicely with maritime law. You are because these babies were shipped. They were shipped to America amongst other places. So calling them cabbage patch babies does two things, doesn't it? One, it describes that they were grown from cabbages, and you can dismiss it as just old nonsense. Oh, it's just an old fairy tale that they used to say in Russia years and years ago. But also, cabotage law is exactly the process that they would have gone through when they were shipped and arrived in America and put in some kind of Harry Potter sorting hat and distributed to the Midwest. So it's quite interesting. A lot of people aren't aware of that one, cabotage law.
Wow, 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 wow. So many things there. In looking back at the the wigs and the makeup and the white lead and how somebody came up with that as something beauteous and wondrous. Of course, there's going to be reasons. There'll be stories because they have to have a paper trail of where something came from and the mole, the beauty spot,
Yes.
you know, and then looking at why that came in. So if we go back to, let's say, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who played piano. His father was a music teacher of Marie Antoinette, let's say, in the court of Louis the 16th, is it? The 16th? I forget. The numbers don't work in my brain, but who knows indeed what even the timeline was there. But we're presented with images of the men wearing stockings, black shoes, and so it goes back a long way. So how many resets do we think there was during the time from people wearing more sackcloth? I mean, there's a big jump. There isn't a walk up to something. There isn't like a slow ascension of fashions, and it's really quite bizarre. And then can really kind of tie in with what you're saying about radiation poisoning and all the rest of it. So in terms of those thoughts, like the children would wear the great. They talk. There's many times they're presented with the greatest dresses and silks from France. France has always featured heavily in fashion. In all of the history books that we've ever seen
Yes.
or films that we've ever seen. Why do you think that is? How does that also tie in?
I don't know. I don't know, but you're right. It does, and you're quite right still today, but also cuisine. It all points to France, and I don't know why. Um, Also, with regard to composers that you mentioned earlier, um, I often wonder if that music is Tartarian and that these composers are created to give a story or ownership, perhaps is a better word, to give ownership of something. I often wonder that as well. But I don't know. I don't know why we look to France for Paris in particular, isn't it? For fashion and food and culture. Um, but then, of course, people would say the same about London. But obviously, living here in England, we know that that's not really the case. You've got one street where you can get a decent suit made, and the rest of it's just the same as everywhere else. Um, I don't know. And now you've got my brain working. I mean, we need to look into that. Why Paris? Obviously, the official narrative won't be worth looking into because we know that they're normally wrong and just, I suppose, fill in blanks for us so we stop questioning. But that's something that we need to explore. Why Paris? But also, of course, Milan. Milan's considered to be, there as well, isn't it? But Paris is, it's got to be the world leader with fashion.
Yeah. With the composers, and so let's say, so there's a thinking, and Lynn McTaggart in her book The Field, she shares what she calls the field of possibilities, where every single being, no exceptions, every single being has an ability to tap into that law, into that pool of consciousness, let's say, and pull in, and then from that, then create ideas and manifest and make them physical. And we know that's true. It's absolutely true. There's no question. And I used to think about, how is it that we have a period of time, which is Mozart,
Mm.
um, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, these amazing composers that were all around at a very similar time. All of them, the most famous ones, very, very similar time. And then why is it that we also have Monet, Manet, Degas, Renoir, Cézanne? They call them the Renaissance painters. Again, all around the very, very similar time. And that history is what is presented to us. Now, my favorite museum that I've been to so far in the entire world is the Musée d'Orsay en Paris, in Paris. The museum is the old railway station. It is enormous and beautiful. And when you go in there, I haven't been there for a long time. Don't ever go on a Monday. It's closed on a Monday, everyone. Paris is closed on a Monday. Or the museums are, apparently. Because I went there once and it was bloody shut. Devastated. But you go up and down in this amazing museum and you'll see all of the Renaissance period painters all very close together. And it is just astonishing to me. But the museum is astonishing to me. It is like someone's great collection of what I've just said. Here's the period of these kinds of painters. Here's the period of these composers. They've got sculptures in there from Auguste Rodin, R-O-D-I-N, Auguste Rodin, who I think is one of the most prolific sculptors of all time. And then speaking of that, we've got information coming out now on technology where some of the sculptures that we see are human beings. They're human beings.
Yes, yes.
It's very macabre what's coming out, isn't it?
I've been looking into that for some time, actually, petrification. And the stories are there that they go back, thousands of years. If you look at this story of, Medusa being able to turn people to stone and people in the Bible being turned to pillars of salt. I, I, I've, I've spent quite a long time talking to somebody, and I would recommend if anybody's interested in this particular subject, checking out a channel on YouTube called Mud Fossil University.
Oh, he's
Roger
great.
Spur.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, we have some incredible conversations, Roger and I, and I'm with him. I mean, he has found stones, like large rocks. He found this perfectly round rock that he believed was a hair follicle from a very, very big being. Very, very, we're talking hundreds of feet tall. And he spoke to Harvard, Yale, I think as well, and maybe MIT, Johns Hopkins. He contacted them and said that he'd found this rock. This is what he believed it was. Would they analyze it? And they refused to play ball. So he got it independently analyzed. He actually got DNA extracted from it, human. It came back human. And this hair follicle is the size of a baseball. So I think that a lot of these statues are petrified beings, and people have actually seen this, where an arm has snapped off, and inside, if you look closely, you can see what appears to be a body. You can see the muscles, the arteries, the bone. It is present in there. So I wonder if these are also trophies. I also think that that's true of the crown jewels. I because just to give you an example, a lot of people do this now. It's been around for a little while. This isn't brand new, but you can get the ashes of a deceased loved one, a pet or a person, and you can have them turned into a synthetic gemstone. Well, I wonder if that's what the crown jewels are. If they are synthetic gemstones of people that they have removed. So you take over an empire, you take the ruler, and their ashes are turned into a synthetic gemstone. We'll stick that one there. He's there, she's there. I think that they've been doing these things for a very, very long time. But the animals, sorry, I beg your pardon, the beings that are petrified, these statues, again, this is hammer and chisel. You mentioned it earlier on. Hammer and chisel. That these sculptures are so perfect in every detail. I mean, we can see veins, creases in skin, all done with hammer and chisel. I think it's more likely that they were somehow pacified, um, numbed, stoned, drunk. I don't know. And then they were covered in a liquid, perhaps like a melted marble, a very fine layer of it. There are statues out there as well. There's one I can't remember its name, but it's a really famous statue where the person, the figure, is covered in some sort of netting.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that one. Yeah,
Did you?
yeah.
How did they do with a hammer and chisel?
It's so insulting. There are people that say that there could be some kind of epoxy resin that you would lay over, like a friend of mine, Dr. Mayu Soro Espinosa, sadly is in heaven right now. And but she would make sculptures from plaster of Paris. So she would cover the face of the
Hmm.
model and then stick, have to have the nose open, obviously, and then she'd make beautiful hands. I mean, you could do a lot, literally an overlay of a complete and utter molding of everything would show up with these, ancient techniques that have been obviously largely hidden, but also, and it is very macabre. So when you talk about you believe that some of the gemstones or, stones in the crowns, etc., are the remains of the soul of the body crushed from a did you see something fly behind me then?
No, no, I didn't.
I'm going to catch that back. We'll see what that was. I'm pretty sure I just saw something fly behind me. I'm not going to go into fairyland here, but there are people that believe that the diamonds, etc., and gemstones definitely hold the souls of the deceased, which is a
Hmm.
horrific thought. But it's more than one person who's come forward and said that. People who've studied the magi, the ancient ways, the dark magic, the dark occults have said these very same things. And you know, there are people in power today that put themselves in power, the self-anointed, self-appointed, who've been accused of horrific, heinous crimes, who there are videos or audio sounds of them that has left me personally deeply disturbed. I'll never recover from some of the dreadful things that people have shared with me. And a couple of those have sculptures that are extremely disturbing to look at. A body that is covered in gold or brass hanging from the ceiling that has the very same nerves showing and bones and ribs and all the rest of it. And, they love to share and show their trophies. They love to
Absolutely.
present in plain sight. And so it is a very deep disturbing because it just disturbs the very fiber of love and goodness and grace and everything, and it leaves you with that blood curdling metallic blood and urine taste. Those of us have gone through horrific violence, we know those smells. Those of us that have been part of helping others who've been in those environments, we know those smells very well. Those of us that tap into past lives, we know those smells and tastes very well. I think there are so many of us who've come back now to share, to open, to aid people in opening their minds and discovering and thinking. And yes, for some, it's always going to be way too much to handle. You know, it's been way too much for me to handle. There are people that say, oh, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I say, balls to that. That's a lie. In my experience, from things I've experienced, that many people have experienced, that's a lie. But we have to keep going. We have to keep going because of the beauty and the brightness and the wonder and the joy on this beautiful planet that is ours. You know, it is ours. So let's bring this incredible conversation to a close. I just want to check that there's anything else that you feel we've left out on the wigs and the paint and the lipstick and what that was made from, the staining, the protecting themselves against radiation poisoning, anything in that arena.
No, but I did have a thought a moment ago, but it completely escaped me. Um, right at the start, you said this was the other thing I wanted to say that about trolls, and I had this conversation with an American podcaster recently, and he said that he had got to the point with the comments and the trolls on his channel that he had actually questioned whether or not to continue. And I said to him that if you weren't putting information out there that didn't matter, then you wouldn't be having these trolls. The reason they're targeting you is because you're sharing information that does matter. And that if you're being attacked by people, and I get it every day, that's a clear indication that we're on the right path. And I think that we're never going to be able to get our next door neighbor, our loved one, or even our sibling to necessarily agree with what we're talking about or even consider the information we present them with. But there are people out there that are just waking up and we're helping them with that process. So I think that if we're going to stand a chance of getting through this great reset, the World Economic Forum's desire to once again depopulate, the only way we're going to do that is if we stand together, put our differences aside, and look for a common goal. And I think whether someone's awake or not, I think we can all agree that our best interests aren't at the heart of the people that run the show. And if we can all agree on that one thing, then maybe together we can replace them. So I think if you're getting trolled, as you said at the start, then you're doing some great work, Danny.
Ah, thank you, mate, as you are too. That's why I have my wonderful whistleblowing conferences. That's why I bring together what I believe are the greatest speakers in the world. You know, and unfortunately, you get the odd one that gets so big in their own mind that they then the ego takes over, and that's a real shame. And I send them love, and I really do. And just stay away from me. I don't want to have to smack you. Yeah, yeah. And like I said, you know, if you get it wrong, you got to apologize. I've done that
Mm,
many times lately, and that's fine too. And I think someone said to me once, you know, Danny, you know, you run this great event, you know, every year, and I own it. I own it. It's mine. It's no one else's. I own it. Someone said, oh, Oprah Winfrey runs that. No, she fucking doesn't. It's mine, you know. And I run it and to protect the integrity of it. Then no, I don't have a partner on it at all because there's your alarm. Because I can't risk someone infiltrating and coming in
yeah.
and putting shit out into the field and lying to people. I won't allow it. I won't allow it. But if your ego gets too big for your boots, you ain't speaking at my conference either, because I'm not doing that, right? It's not one voice, it's everyone's voice. And yeah, we just got to keep on going and doing what we're doing. I love our conversations. I really do. I love hanging out with you. You're so fascinating. I can't wait for our next one. We're going to tease the audience now. Next time, me and Guy, we're going to talk about mermaids and
Yes.
merpeople. And I think we should bring fairies in as well. And I think I should bring a friend
Yes.
on. I should bring a friend on with me who's got some fairy experience. I think that would be really, really fascinating to do a three-way with her. I won't say who it is, but you all know her. Anyway, brilliant. Guy, tell us how we can get hold of you. Tell us what you're doing in the next few months. And just over to you, mate.
Well, until they take me away, they can still reach out to me through my website, which I put blogs on there. It's information I can't put on social media, but my links to socials are on there as well, and they can get information on my books if they want to read them. And that's called the Tartarian Empire.co.uk. What am I up to? Well, I'm working with David's sons, Jamie and Gareth, but also with Richard and Charlotte at Iconic on putting a two-part documentary together, which is based on my first book. Got Paris coming up. Then I'm doing a talk in Holland. Then I'm off to America to do some talks, October, November, and then Japan. I'm being sent to Japan to do a talk in January next year. So, and whilst that's going on, I'm still trying to write because, as I said to you before we hit record, what I've learned over the last 2 years since I wrote my first book about Tartaria reinforces what I wrote. I found more evidence to support what I found, and that's got to be shared. So I want to put that out there. Yeah, I'm going to put another book out there on Tartaria, but it won't have chapters on Nikola Tesla, chapters on who the parasites are and what's going on now. It is just literally a Tartarian Bible. Everything you need to know.
Oh my God, that's so exciting and
Mm.
so needed. And I'm feeling kind of smug right now that I ran across your path, that I'm bringing you to my beautiful audience. You were so,
Likewise, Danny.
oh, we're so lucky. Yay us! Yay us!
And I'm going to
Yeah.
be on a stage with two people in particular that I have admired for such a long time. And talking of egos, look at what David Icke has been through.
Oh
You
God.
know, and now wherever he goes in the world, people know his name, and he has not changed. His message is the same. He's still got a smile on his face, and he's still humble. And it was David. He was one of the biggest influences in waking me up. I think I was born woken up.
David Icke.
Um, but
David Icke.
David Icke, I mean, to share a stage with him is fantastic. And of course, I wrote about him and Billy Castle in my first book.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and Billy Carson, two people, and that's and Kathy O'Brien is so well known as well, and Praveen Mohan for his work on the temples, and Nikki Allen, the angel, and a couple of others, but not the global status that they have. And they are the most down to earth, the loveliest, humble. They don't need bodyguards or special foods or pillows, or there's no diva bollocks. They're just straightforward, here to do a job, here to serve. Everyone's gone through their stuff, and I mean, I did a beautiful broadcast with David Icke and Kathy O'Brien, and they've been both working for 35, 36 years, saying to everyone, there's parasites at the top. The leaders, the royals, they're all filthy dirty, all these bloodline families. And, like you said, now all their work is proven. It's proven.
Yes.
What really does upset me is that mostly silly women out there, silly women, right? They get in these little gaggly groups and they go, oh, but so and so said David eats babies. And you think
Oh,
one
yeah.
person heard it, one person heard it, and then Chinese whispers, here we go, here we go, here we go. And I hear the same about Elon Musk. I couldn't care less about him. Sasha Stone, oh, they're at the 12-year-old boy rituals. Oh my God, one person said it, one person. And now it's taken on fire and it's, ooh, and people go, Dani, he's this and he's that. I'm like, oh, shut up. Unless you've got absolute proof, be
Mm.
quiet, because you people are getting in the way of truth. And they go, oh, well, you and Guy must be satanic then. It is pathetic and it is a waste of time engaging. I just
Mm.
delete everybody. I just delete. Make a mental note. Stay away from me. Don't come to my conference. We don't need the trolleys and the blockers. Just go away. No one's got time for you, because love wins and truth wins, and everything that we came back to do, we're doing. So balls is my final message.
It's funny you say it because I all the time people that are fully up to date with their boosters will say that I am being paid to put this information out there by the Freemasons, that I am heavily involved with the government. I mean, all they need to do is Google me. They could put in my name and tattoo. and they'll see that not only was I a tattoo artist for a very long time, I wrote for magazines about tattooing, I was on a TV show about, there's no government employment or anything at all. And I'm also apparently a 33rd degree Freemason.
Wow.
I've never met one. And when people say to me, did you hear the other day that somebody said on some TikTok thing that you are a 33rd degree Freemason and you're very high ranking and you've got all these connections with big players within the government? I always say the same thing. Yeah, I told my butler and we had a damn good laugh about it.
Oh no, you had a giggle when he brought you your tea and muffins for the
Yeah,
afternoon. It's
yeah,
so
well, he was fueling
ridiculous.
the jet. Yeah,
With champagne.
yeah.
Because apparently they don't run on fuel, but let's not go there, or kerosene. Let's not go there. Another myth that someone's trying to bust. Oh my God, we could be here all day. Well,
Mm.
listen, I know you've got another appointment to get to because you are just in such great demand. I am grateful for the time that you gave me today, and I'm so happy for the beautiful audience that will watch this. And even if some get triggered, it's all right, Doris. That's all right. Cup of tea will sort you out. Anyway, thank you, Guy Anderson. Until next
Thank
time.
you. Thank you, Danny.
Oh, bless your heart. And my name is Dani Henderson, guys. You've got till January the 31st to get the lowest price tickets ever for our conference. We're only charging £270 to see Guy Anderson, David Icke, Kathy O'Brien, Praveen Mohan, Billy Carson, JP, Nikki Allen, Tony Rodriguez, Kathy O'Brien. Oh my God. Eastbourne, East Sussex, September 10th, 11th, and 12th. 3 amazing days. And we're going to do a sky watch and see if we can't invite some UFOs in. As they normally come to my conferences, we shall see. A sky watch is for everybody. Until next time, I send you love from my heart to yours, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you.